Hi. Hello. First, a big round of applause for our audience. Thank you for being here. Uh, so, talking of inspiration, Assamese poet Navakanta Barua wrote, ভয় নাই এতিয়াও মৈথুন আৰু শস্যৰ প্ৰয়োজন থকালৈ থাকিব মানুহ আৰু কবিতা থাকিব মানুহৰ ৰখীয়া হয় It translates like this: No fear thus far. Until there is love and hunger, will remain, and poetry will remain our guiding light. So, following this, I'll probably read two poems, one on hunger and one on love, from my latest collection. It's called Book of Prayers, which just came out 2 days back. But before that, a short introduction, probably, from this poem called We Are Our Ancestors. Who am I? Why? Don't you recognize me? I am what I am. I am what I always was. I am your blood. I am your clan name. I am what you have forgotten. I am what you don't want to remember. I am the last son of the serpent whose home you torched to build your city. I am the sailor who discovered the island of Rose Apple. I am the farmer of Sindhu. I am the horn-headed god of Meluha. I am Inanna's lover, she with feathers and talons. I am the savage from the mountain, consort of the dark night. I am the demon prince, the master of death. I am the first martyr who survived the first flood. Now moving on to hunger. Thank you. Quickly, this is the story of from Mahabharata, where when the Pandavas were in the forest, the goddess Annapurna gave Draupadi a vessel where she can cook a little bit and feed the entire army, with only one condition, that if she eats from that, and then the food will be over. So it's from there. One. Have the last morsel, Yagnashani. The vessel is empty. Everything has been shared. The husbands are content. The sons have gone back to sleep. The daughters wait. Mother, have the last morsel. The vessel is empty. Outside, the guests gather. Mother, nurture us. I have a short tongue, so my tongue dries up fast. I'm sorry. What would you do, Yagnashini? Cook your flesh? Cook the flesh of your daughters? A tumbler full of tears cannot quench their thirst. The embers of their eyes cannot light the kitchen fire. Mother, cook your flesh? Cook the flesh of your daughters. Your sons are asleep. Your husband's content. Outside, the guests gather, starved. Have the last morsel, Yagnashani. The vessel is empty. 2. This grain of rice, this is where it begins. This is where it ends. This grain of rice. The husk is for the birds. The peeled skin is for the animals. The gruel is for the reptiles. This grain of rice, have the last morsel, Yagnashani. The vessel is empty. The last morsel is for a boy who hasn't smelt a balloon. The last morsel is for the girl who hasn't seen a pencil. 3. This grain is for the important father with 3 unmarried daughters. This drop of lentil is for the rickshaw puller under the rain. 4. Everything is empty. The sky is empty of water, the earth of green leaves, our bellies empty of food, our minds of hope. 5. This last morsel is for Jayant Mahapatra, who would share it with the old fisherman. Thank you. Now we come to love. Uh, this is a little longer one, I hope. Yeah. Uh, one. At 19, I decided I would kill myself at 40. I was young. Life looked enormously long. Now at 37, I have accepted the unapologetic inevitability of death. I hear time, the winged chariot, hurrying near. I am ready to depart, but I'm not ready to bid goodbye. I'm not ready to dance the dance of destiny. I'm not ready to see someone I know, a friend, a family, climb aboard the winged chariot. I'm not ready to see the grim reaper accompany someone I know and love the way he accompanied him, who was my breeding apparatus, who could have made me happy. Two, I'm not dead. Neither am I alive. I am the last seed of a lost genus, of the world's most beautiful tree, buried under a layer of sand, waiting for the rain to seep in. He was my rain. He was the root to my budding leaf. The only goal of love is to satiate the desire to be with the person you love, an impossible ambition. And the only constant of love is the mounting fear of losing the object of your affection. The more you love, the more the fear grows, and until at one point, this fear and this love become synonymous. There was nothing common between us. I was young, he old. I was rustic, he sophisticated. I poor, he rich. I restless, he rooted. We spoke different languages. The only thing that bound us was this mysterious, absurd thing called love. I was happiest in his company when his old finger caressed my restless hands, when my thumb recognized his hungry lips, when we got drunk and ambled on the empty streets at midnight. 15 years later, I still miss the heartbeat. I close my eyes and I can hear it. I cannot endure. There was nothing common between us. As our love longed to be together, we knew the night will soon end and we will wake up in our respective lives as if this one never existed. So I started collecting memorabilia. So I started memorizing the details of his life. His phone number, the name of his father, the name of the first lover who had broken his heart 1,000,000 years ago, the neighborhood in Chennai where he grew up, all the places he had traveled to, his mother's death anniversary, and the name of her household god. It was inevitable. One day, I will sprout wings and flee this alien city of the blessed. One day, his heart will explode into 1,000 tiny pieces in a sky blue hospital room. He had a hole in his heart, a childhood condition, a manufacturing defect. He was living on borrowed time, and we built a relationship on a road between a restaurant and a hostel in a car at midnight. And our witness, the Grim Reaper. So we talked about the eventual departure. I vowed to be with him until the bitter end, like a Christian wedding vow, until death do us apart. I'll tell him, if nothing else, I can promise you that I will be there for your burial. He would reply, it must be a cremation. He was a tambram. I would say, then I will light your face with fire. This was the extent of my love. I was no Savitri to follow my Satyavan, but I was ready to see my beloved go up in flames, and perhaps steal some ash from the ground after everything was over. I had already purchased an urn. This did not happen. He was critical, and I was promised I will receive a call Once I was out of the hospital, my phone never buzzed. 3 months later, I got the news. He, whom I loved, had been dead for more than 2 months. This has to happen one day, but what I regret is this. I could not attend the last ride. I could not see him depart. There was no goodbye. I wanted a goodbye. I longed for a goodbye. I live. I will until I'm dead. I'm not unhappy. I'm not happy either. There's a wound in my heart that continues to fester. I have learned to live with it. It doesn't mean I'm not troubled by its existence every single day, every morning when I wake up, every night when I go to sleep. At times the wound oozes with pus and pain and discontent. Those days are difficult. Then the wound heals itself, and a few days later, it festers again, accumulating pus and pain. And the future? The great unknown. I see my life as if on a movie screen, as if it's happening to someone else. This is a fantasy, a grand romance. 10 years from now, in an unknown city, under unforeseen circumstances, I will meet someone. That day, 10 years from now, I will be of the same age he was, and the stranger whom I meet will be of the same age as I was 15 years ago. This is as simple as it sounds. He whom I loved, the cure of my festering heart, he, the stranger, he will be born again somewhere else with another name, another face, and one day I'll bump into him. And we will dance the dance of destiny. But how will I know it was him? I will. The moment I see him, I will be happy again. Like the fog that disperses from the wizened tree in the middle of an empty field with the arrival of the sun, I will be awake from these years of mourning, and I will be happy again. I know, I will. And at that precise moment, that merciless fear, the fear of losing the object of our affection, will return to haunt us. We will complete the circle. Thank you.
So I'll begin with a few new unpublished poems. When all else fails. When all else fails, there's nothing left to talk about. The candles are all out. Rice has stopped growing. Rivers have stopped flowing. Nations are falling. The children are dying. No one left to follow. No one left to lead. There's no time for friends. Not enough hate to kill. Forget about passion. Faith is out of fashion. This is the right time to go out and unite. This is the right time to go out and fight. When all else fails, declare a bloody war. So when I got the topic for the panel, don't look for anything to write about, I spent a few minutes thinking about what that meant. Because it is delightfully vague. You can interpret it any way you like. So I was very tempted to rewrite the last line of this poem, because right now I've said, when all else fails, declare a bloody war. So I almost rewrote it as, when all else fails, write a bloody poem. Dane John Gardens. So this is a little bit of context. This is a lovely garden in Canterbury, England. I was there for a little while on a residency. The beautiful thing about the garden is the trees. And you have a walkway lined with these trees on either side. And the branches are reaching out to each other, but they never touch each other. They're almost there, but they never touch each other. So it really kind of, that sight stayed with me. Dane Gardens. Like trees in the Dane that reach out to each other, never quite needing the other, let us hold hands without wanting each other's warmth if winters would obstinately stay. Missing. You don't need to talk to me every now and then to let me know your love doesn't change with the season. Your strength lies in your silence, and my weakness in my words. So though I say, don't break my heart, and you panic, you just might, you won't. Because like the window that opens to perpetual sunrise and seagulls, you will always fill my room with light. This darkness is temporary, this missing very ordinary, and I never settle for anything plain. Lost and found. When your lips part for a kiss, a path appears into the woods where I want to get lost and never be found. The one I'm going to read now, I think, applies to any city where the metro is an inevitable part of your life. Mind the gap. These bodies swaying to the rhythm of the insomniac snake, these children of the owlless city, feet, coats, nails and all, the movers and the moved, the pushers and the shoved, the old and the young, men, women, and dogs, bags, umbrellas, and poetry, eyes down, nose up. These are the citizens of the underworld, 100 feet under. For the traveler, hide that cash in a faraway place, knowing well it will be spent like your youth in search of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Tie those shoelaces up, though they come undone, when your feet want to rest and feel the new earth under. It is the same dirt, same dust, same wonder and doubt on every face wherever you go. Though skin might change with the changing season, polish your own till it shines. They need to see your country in you. And though you leave one day, you bring back some of their dust, dirt, and skin back. You return, half here, half there. You live till you leave again, half here, half there. Now for a few poems from my book 9, which is available outside. I live in Trivandrum, but I was born and raised in Chennai, so a lot of Chennai is part of me. Mylapore, Chennai. I don't know how many Tamilians are here. Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with Mylapore, but it's this lovely, bustling part of the city with all these wonderful smells. I particularly recommend a mess called Karpagam Mess, where you get ade and avial, which is fantastic. I'll read it and then I hope to get the applause. Okay. Mylapore, Chennai. Fresh vegetables and slush bathe inviting streets, fight with gods for space. oiled plates, snakes charmed by tunes of wayside flutes and chattering bangles. Eager nostrils take adai and avial trails to Karpagam mess. Elegant silks dressed up tall glass windows. I see my wedding sari. The Last Supper. The scene shifts to a different city. A couple sits at a bistro, their faces dark from coffee. With every sip, they draw blood. With every bite, they maul words. By the end of the meal, the sea would rise, and they would drink each other dry. Then this one is for my husband who's here. So he wears this Navaratna ring. I think most of you would be familiar with the 9 gems that make up the ring, which supposedly brings good fortune. Navaratna. He wears 9 planets on 10 fingers. 1 gem short of good fortune. The memory maker. When she died, her body grew into walls, walls into feet, feet into rooms, rooms into eyes, eyes into roof, roof into hands, hands into pillars, pillars into head, head into cobwebs, cobwebs into hair, hair into air, air into dust, and he turns dust into memory. I'll conclude with a new poem. I am a woman and I write. I am a woman and I write. I write and I am a woman. I write of longing, belonging, of my body, of everybody, of my home, my country where I roam. I am a woman and I write. My poetics are screwed up, my imagination dried up. I lack conviction and I give up easily. I lack direction and I give in easily. I seek a voice which will not be heard. I am a woman and I write. I make things up because they seem right. I am everything I am not. A devoted mother, a faithful wife. I lie exquisitely. I choose metaphors carefully. I say grand things like I am a woman and I write. I declare, denounce, decry, and detest. I have a point, but don't care enough to make it. What can I say? I am a woman and I write. Thank you.
Okay, when I looked at the topic, don't look for something to write about, it's advice a writer friend often gives me, don't look or wait for something to write about. But that leads to the inevitable question, what do I write about? Right, so it's just another way of asking, where do poems come from? And that's not a question I think most poets want to answer, including me. At least not in general. But that's an easier question to answer in specifics. Right? So what I've done is I've tried to pick a few poems that have different inspirations or reasons for me writing them. And depending on which one you like, maybe it will show you a place to look for the next one you write. So my first poem has religious inspiration, but let me be clear. I'm an atheist, which means I don't subscribe to any of the organized or disorganized religions. But I am a firm believer in the eternal divinity of chai. So it's always tea over coffee for me. So this poem is called Making Tea. Boil the water, she says, till it's warmer than common lust, but cooler than a hot temper. Pour the water, let it sit, longer than an impatient child's pleading, but not as long as brooding jealousy. Pour it out into cups, add sugar sweeter than kindness, but not as saccharine as indulgence. Stir after you add milk, enough for the color of compassion, but not for the shade of weakness. Serve it with courtesy that falls short of servitude, and sip it slowly with gratitude. My next poem comes from two things I tend to consume a lot of. The second one will be apparent from the title, but the first one is science fiction. I read a lot of it. And if your body is what you eat, then your mind or your mental body is pretty much what you read. Right? So this tends to come up with a lot of my poems. So this poem is called, it'll give you, even whether it tells you where to look for a poem or not, it will give you some good practical advice for life. It's called How to Eat Alien Kebabs. Okay. The vegetarian ones are no safer than the others. In fact, beware of those that are expected to take root and keep growing. Colors can be misleading. If you're served grey kebabs, do not be afraid to ask for those special glasses. Remember, the things you fail to see properly at first are often the prettiest. And though your guidebooks and petty officials will tell you otherwise, do not go empty-handed. Carry a few sugar-dusted biscuits to spread out as an unexpected dessert. Or unabashedly produce a jar of your mother's green chutney from a sleeve. You see, the point in venturing into the unknown is not adventure, or fame, or fortune, or even escape. The point is to understand that arriving at the loneliest of places, among the strangest of people, with the most bizarre of customs, there is still always room at the table. So my next poem is coincidentally the title poem of my book. And based on Sonam's advice from yesterday, I plan to keep carrying copies in my backpack over there. But just for today, you guys can buy it from the stalls outside. Some poems do come from a direct inspiration from something I read or hear. And this poem, which is called The Sand Libraries of Timbuktu, I thought of when I had read a news article about the numerous ancient Arabic manuscripts that had just come to light or just getting popular on the internet in the city of Timbuktu in Mali, right? And these had been preserved in families and passed from generation to generation. And at that point, it was scary because for me, because it could be that these manuscripts, having come to the attention of the world, might get swallowed up by one or both of those things that swallow up so much, which is war and capitalism. So this is the Sand Libraries of Timbuktu. What does a book that's been silent for 700 years say when you open it? Does it mutter half sentences in crumbling, dusty dialects? Or do the words burst out of the page inexplicably like a spring rising out of desert sand. Perhaps the books are more ordinary, and like their curators, fire bereft and bold. Tracks political, historical, astronomical, and all in verse, enlightening, undramatic, practical. They are ancient authors unencumbered by the West. How often has a book that's been passed from generation to generation been read out loud? Enough trickling out, perhaps, to stain shores more familiar now. A Sufi tale or two in Andersen's, with clothing heavier for the Danish cold. The silvery glint of a medical treatise in Crusoe's empty island. Which of these thousands of books, which of these millions of pages, soon to be gathered up by academic hordes, by armies of vain collectors, will be left to the careless wayfarer to be found as unexpected oases? Perhaps a thin sheaf of love poems, like the claws of a meaty beast, cast off as offal, but still the shape of those that still mark our flesh as we stumble blindly in the desert, in the slow search for the caravan. And for my last poem this evening, sometimes it's not the meat of the poem that I start with, it's the bones. So the structure of the poem can be somewhere you start, and then the poem grows on its own. So I started this particular poem when I'd heard a couple of great self-referential poems. And a self-referential poem is nothing mysterious, it's just a poem that refers to itself in the lines. And I wanted to write a self-referential poem of my own. So this poem is unsurprisingly called This Poem. This poem will start simple and speak straight to you because you wrote it yourself. But you will forget this poem as soon as you've heard it. This is the poem you tried to write at 16 and would have at 30 if not busy buying a living. This poem will change nothing. This poem was written in Bombay. This poem is a road you can either walk down or rename. This poem has seen death in fatal railway track crossings and exploded second-class carriages, blood on riot-born swords, and from everyday mosquito bites of indifference. This poem has cried itself to flooding, drowned in its own tears, and still lived to complain about the city's lack of drainage. This poem is sunlight and life-giving rain. It rises up and shakes its filth-covered fist at the sun, laughing at its own bruises. This poem is dead. It wrote itself on the back of an unencashed compensation check passed from father to son. This poem is ordinary. That's why it is beautiful. This poem is breath, sweet, smog-colored, concrete-scented breath, the scent thrown off by huge metal animals in the steel and brick forest. This poem would be ordinary if it were beautiful with burgundy-dyed similes and streaky blonde allusions. But this poem is bold. It uses none of its own words. Instead, it uses 10-rupee roadside words, stuffed in paos with onions and 2 types of chutney. This poem is washed over in the surf of 1,000 other poems whose sentences clamber over it like children reaching for a view of the tamasha. And yet its shoulders stay strong. This poem will win no awards. This poem is unoriginal. This poem comes without intervals or toilet breaks. This poem would be longer if the neighbors didn't play their music so fucking loud. This poem is a thief. It sips your sweetest dreams, gorges on your laughter, wins your children's adoration, fucks your wife, your husband, and leaves you to navigate those empty afternoon hours alone. This poem is always simple and speaks straight to you, but you always forget this poem as soon as you've heard it, because you write it yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Uttaran, and I'm going to read a few poems. When I started thinking about the subject that had been given us, do not go looking for things to write, I thought maybe I should go and look for things to eat. So food is the theme of most of the poems I'm going to read. So the first one is a new poem. It's called Iftar at Kreuzberg. So this year during Ramzan, I was in Berlin. And I live in Delhi, so in Berlin there was no good food compared to the food we get in Delhi. So anyhow, we went to this Kurdish restaurant, and then something happened. And this was also the height of the World Cup, so Iftar at Kreuzberg. More cheering at the sports bar down the road as Spain equalizes. German flags, yes. Also Iran, Iceland. Large screens at pubs all sizes. We choose a Kurdish restaurant serving dal. The roti rises in the tandoor. For dessert, baklava. A few compromises. Can I have those kebabs? The man speaks broken English, surprises us. His finger points at my plate. My companion realizes, yeah, but how will you take it? No kindness immunizes against desperation. He takes the food in paper napkins, thanks us, apologizes. The second poem is also about another iftar, but this is in Calcutta. It's called Iftar on Lenin Shoroni. Lenin Shoroni is the new name that the communist government had given to Dharamtala Street. Iftar on Lenin Shoroni. A tram cuts through the humid dusk like a prehistoric lizard, slouching, sinister, looking out to gobble up any careless bard. Radios on TVs, laptops, gramophones, all tumbling upwards, encroaching the narrow footpath, buzzing, alive, a haphazard electronic architecture. Around here, the buses discard automatons in a hurry. But a pedestrian would be hard-pressed to find a linear way or swiftly pass by, disregard, skull-capped men sitting in circles, breaking fast with fries, fruit, and curd. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have had shukto? Oh, that's quite a few. So those of you who haven't had it, I highly recommend it. It's a vegetarian dish which is like heaven. I'm a devoted non-vegetarian, but this is my favorite dish. But shukto has a sinister history in the sense, they say that the best shukto is cooked by a widow who has been a widow for 6 or 7 years. And that's because, Bengali widows in the 19th and early 20th century weren't allowed to have non-vegetarian food. So they would, keep working on this dish and perfect it. So this is called Only One Who's Been a Widow. Only one who's been a widow 6, 7 years can hope to make shukto like this. Worried, he curls his toe. Obviously, the person who made it is a man. Did I miss something? A mistake? None, she smiles. I can detect. The heat, bittersweet, all perfect. The ceiling fan stirs the humid air like a ladle in a curry. My grandfather would compare shukto to sitar. Don't hurry with your food, your music. Let them be therapeutic. Allow them to reverse the cracks, the erosion of existence. Soporific hours fall like black curtains on their sunlit sense of time, dusk. I'll have to return, but tell me, where did you learn? She lives in a one-bedroom flat, a recluse, a magician, sown to silence, shy of combat, by her more famous musician husband. She taught you how to cook shukto? Yes. At first, she mistook me for a servant. Pause, laughter, and you were there to interview her. You should be an actor, not a scribe. Old tricks. You have no clue what you will learn if you just keep quiet. Learn what? About music and diet. My great aunt lived for 13 years in Kashi. Kashi is where many Bengali widows would be sent to. She covered her nose while cooking, haunted by fears of pollution, and would rarely disclose her tricks. How did she accomplish the ecstatic raga of mustard fish? And that was the poem. And then I'm going to end with a very, very short poem. This poem, I was not going to read it, but I was having a conversation with a friend, and she was asking me, what is the temperature in Delhi now? So I said, it's comfortable, it's about 32, 33, 35. She's like, 35 is comfortable. So I said, yeah, it gets 48. And when it gets 48, many of us run away to the hills. And this one year, a few years back, I did not have money to do that. So the hills came home. This is in fact inspired by a Bengali poem by Shakti Chattopadhyay called Pahariya Kolkata. The hills come home. Here, they are always digging. Gigantic cranes turning up earth for Baulis, the metro, building foundations. Wherever I go, hillocks block Aurobindo Road, bylanes in Green Park. We had planned to take the midnight bus to Manali from Kashmiri Gate, never did it. And now it's too late. Yet this morning, in the watery light, New Delhi has become a hill station. The hillocks have sprouted eucalyptus, pines, deodar. GK, that is Greater Kailash, is a tea plantation. And on my neighbor's balcony are lines of Tibetan flags. Did rain prompt this strange transformation? Delhi is now Macleodganj. Thank you.